Good morning to you, lovely listener. Of course, I'm using good morning because it is the time that I am recording this. But based on whatever time you'll be listening to the episode, good morning, good evening, good late evening to you, lovely listener. And welcome to another episode of Cut the Monologue by your lovely, and I say this on a high, by your lovely hosts, June Robinson. Thank you for tuning in to this episode. Yeah. So I feel like I want to apologize for, would I call it a hiatus? I don't know. I feel like I want to apologize for disappearing. And I feel like for the past three episodes or so, I have been claiming of wanting to maintain a consistency and then I don't. And that is so wrong of me. That is so wrong of me. I feel like when I started this, I really knew that I would maintain a consistency and that I would keep it. But, you know, life happens. And I feel like in due time, I will talk about why it has been a bit tricky for me to maintain the consistency. But being that it is the first day of June, and officially we are on my birthday month. What? I am really, really, really hopeful that I will maintain consistency. Like at this point, I feel like I am that person who says, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do this. And then only to turn around and be doing what I said I'm not going to be doing. But I am hopeful that I am going to try and maintain consistency. Not a weekly, maybe like 3 episodes this month. I need to drop like 3 episodes this month. Yes, and I'm putting that out to the universe. I'm putting it out. I'm claiming that energy. I am claiming that energy of 3 episodes this month. Yes. Anyway, that side note aside, I wanna like thank you for like listening, even in my inconsistency, for like always just trying to listen. And yeah, welcome to another episode of Cut the Monologue. If you haven't followed us on Spotify, please do that. Like our episode, like my podcast. Share it with your friends, share it with your strangers, share it with colleagues, your acquaintances, whoever, share it. I feel like I'm slowly getting the hang of talking by myself. And I feel like I'm getting better, even though I am not good at maintaining consistency. But yeah, you can also follow us on all the social media platforms apart from Facebook. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at Cat the Monologue. Yeah. So on this episode, I want to talk about friendship. Like this episode is just going to be about friendship and just everything that encompasses friends. And this is especially because I have been having this thought in my head. Actually, surprisingly to you, I actually recorded this episode before, but I just felt like I didn't do a good job at it. And so I was like, no, I'm not going to post it. I'm just going to take my time, do a little more research on it, feel it, listen to a couple of more podcasts and what they have talked about in regards to friendship and all that so that I can also know how I want to approach it. And yeah, so I never posted that episode. I recorded it like 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So originally this episode would have dropped in May, but it didn't. And that's okay because it is what it is and we're here now. So on this episode, I have mentioned, I want to talk about friendship and just everything that encompasses a friendship, especially as a growing adult and even as an adult already. um I feel like friendship is something that really plays a major role in your social life, growing up, as a grown up, all that. And I want to talk about it. So, welcome. That sounded so cheesy, but anyway, it's said. let's move on. So, what is a friend? Essentially, just from a quick Google search, a friend is someone who you have a special bond with, someone who you have a mutual feeling of um, attraction towards each other. And it's more so on like a sisterly or a brotherly vibe, but not related by blood. We do have, and I do understand that we do have friendship amongst family members where you feel like your cousin is also your friend, or your brother is more your friend, or your sister, or whoever. But essentially, from the Google search, it excluded the blood bond part of it. And sorry about that. And I feel like as a child, in your childhood days, making friends, at least for me, it used to be easier because you really didn't think a lot about who you're forming this bond with, or who it is that you're calling a friend. Like, you could talk to someone like 2 3 times and they're already your friend. Your mom or your sister would come over with their friends, and they would be in the company of a child, and you get to hang out with this child. And instantly, in that moment, you feel like, this is my friend, this is someone who I can be hanging out with. And and it would follow with, oh, um can you call so and so and tell them to bring their friend, to bring her over so that we can play. I feel like it was easy because as a child, really, and I feel like this is something that we all know, we have very little expectations of who we are interacting with, and who we are meeting, and what we want from them. And that could also, actually, not could also, that is actually majorly played by the fact that there is little that you do as a child. You eat, sleep, poop, go to school, maybe one or two, three chores here and there, and that's just it. There is really not much that is playing in your head. You have little stresses, you have very tiny things of what you would like to talk to someone about. And that changes with every step of growth that you make, or every time that you celebrate a birthday. That changes because I remember the friendships that I had in my primary school years. And for those people who are familiar, or my listeners who are familiar with the Kenyan uh, education system, that was way back from pre-unit, that is the pre-classes, all the way to class 8. It kind of changes when you move to high school. For me, especially because I changed schools when I was in class 6. I moved schools. So in class 7, from class 6 moving on to class 7, when I got to class 7, I was in a different school than I was from 6 all the way to my preschools. And same to kindergarten. I was in a different school in kindergarten, and I do not have any contact. I don't even have a memory of the people who I was with in kindergarten. In preschool, I do remember maybe one or two people, but that's it. From class 1, I do remember like just some of the close friends who I had. I remember I used to have a best friend, but then on from class 2 on to class 3, she moved. They moved as a family, and they went to South Africa. And at that time, there was no such thing as having phones. Like, it was essentially, there were phones, but they were exclusively for adults. And if you're a kid and you're having a phone, you're essentially just playing a game, or you're listening to Nokia's ringtones and just enjoying that. And yeah, and I remember in class 3, I had a friend, and I was friend with this girl from class 3 all the way to class 6. And after that, I transferred, and we did not have contact. I had a couple of other friends in between there. But yeah, when I transferred, and my transferring was not just moving schools. I transferred, and I also moved towns. I moved from Nairobi, went to a different town, and essentially felt like I was starting a new life. Yeah. So those friends, I lost contact with them. And then made new friends in the school that I went. Um, and then when I went to high school, I again lost contact with those friends and I began having new friends in high school. And, just the ups and downs. I feel like high school is where you kind of start maturing a little bit. At that point, like in high school, we all believed we were mature, by the way. And not just in high school. I feel like in every stage of your life, you always feel like you're mature. And then years later, you look back and you're like, what was I doing? Like, what the hell was going on in my head to make me think that I'm mature? Anyway, in high school now, you kind of start getting a hang of, the type of people you want around you. At least that was in my case, by the time I was in like form 2 going into form 3, I already started having a hang of the kind of people I want around me. And this is like that stage where you start being a little more territorial with the people who you're hanging out with. You start knowing who you're telling what, who you're not telling what, because I went to a boarding school. We were enclosed. We would see people's characters 24/7. We would see how people would handle stress, how people would handle jealousy, how people would handle rumors about them, and like just who is talking to who about what and all that. So essentially, that's when I started paying attention to, like, oh, I do not want to hang out with person X because I just feel like her vibe is not vibing with my vibe. And so I do not want that. And you make a friend with someone in form 2 or form 1, and by the time you're getting to the other year, you realize that, no, I've kind of outgrown this friendship, and that's it. It is what it is. But then and as you continue, or as I continued to grow and learn things about myself, what I look for in friendship continued changing. So on to campus now. Finished high school, I'm in campus. I remember there were two girls. We moved from the same high school to the same campus. Essentially, we were a couple, but kind of um, we steered towards each other more. And that was in first year, first sem. By the end of first year, second sem, I just realized that they're not my friends. They're not people who I want to align myself with. They do not fit my energy. And so I took myself out of that equation due to actions that they had done. I took myself out of that equation and I essentially just moved into creating new friendships. And that's when I met my now best friend because I feel like the friendships I formed while I was in campus are and have actually stood the test of time, because I finished campus in 2019, and I essentially still have like a good number of the friendships that I made in campus. I still have them till this day. So I would say, just based off that, I feel like the friendships that I made in campus were more meaningful to me in campus, and even right now that I am out of campus and I am navigating like this growing life of paying my bills, working, just having life stresses, and I can have someone or people who I am talking to about this. So um yeah, I was recently, my friend from campus, my best friend, she's called Paula. She came to visit me and we have been around each other for 2 weeks, which is essentially like the longest time we've spent together since we finished campus. We have been having like sleepovers and just long conversations, but being in close proximity to each other for 2 weeks is like the longest that we've had since we finished campus. And we were just talking. And in our friend group back in campus, we were a friend circle of 5 girls. They never used to understand how me and her are friends. And the two of us, we recognize our differences. For starters, I am more of a planned person. I like having a plan in place. I live with a plan. I have a plan A. If plan A fails, I have a plan B. I always have a plan. My plan to action or my course to action or my path to achieving my goal always has a well clear laid out plan. For Paula, on the other hand, she's more of a free spirited type of person, and she goes with the flow. She doesn't stress over things, she goes with the flow. And for her, things always seem to fall in place. So we were just talking and we were like reflecting on, like just the friends that we had or our friend circle at that time. Of course, the friend circle kind of fell off and everyone went their way apart from me and her. We remained close. We do not know about the other girls. And we were just talking about like expectations in friendships and how there is always this weight that we put on the friendships that we make, expecting things in return. And then when you do not receive that, you start feeling like, oh my God, like this is a fake friend, this is not someone who can help me and all that. And we were like, that is the one thing that I have learned, is that know what to expect from a particular friend of yours. Know what to expect. There are people who, there is a time, sorry, where you could be going through a financial constraint, okay? From your friend group, from your friend circle, or from the people who you are familiar with, you should be able to know that if I am in a financial state, I know so and so can come through for me. And here we are not talking about family, we are talking about friends, people who you have a bond with that is not blood related. You should know that if I am maybe going through a mental state of fatigue or I need someone to talk to, you should know that out of my list of friends, I can talk to this person about my emotional stress. There is, of course, that one person who you can tell all of these things to. And essentially, you usually find that this one person who you can tell all of this to, you usually tell them out of the comfort of knowing. You usually tell them out of the comfort of knowing that I can confide in this person and just let them know about this time when I had a hard path or a rough path, and this person listens to me. It's so unfair. It's very, very unfair that in your adult state, you know that you're going through a state of financial distress and you're asking for financial assistance from someone who you know cannot be able to assist you financially. It's unfair to that person because in your adult state, you should be able to know who is going to come through for you for what. And this is essentially why I always say, and I usually even say it to the people who I usually work with. I'm usually like, you should have an emergency contact list. And your emergency contact list, you should know what emergency can be addressed by who. For instance, if your house, for whatever reason, you may end up being late in paying your bills and whatnot and all that, and your house gets closed down, you should be able to know that, oh my God, in this situation, I know my friend B, so and so, can come through for me. That's one. If you, for instance, want someone who is more more so good with giving someone advice, you should know that if I ask so and so, whatever they tell me will come from a non judgmental, reasonable perspective. You cannot go asking someone who is not good in giving advice for advice. And then when they tell you whatever it is that they tell you and you decide to do it and it fails, you start that is being unfair to that person. And I feel like that is one of the major things, like from our conversation, from that conversation that we had, that is something that came to our realization that know what to expect from your friends. And once you know that, this whole conversation of, oh, is a fake friend and it couldn't come and help me and whatnot, it's because you're placing unrealistic expectations on a real person. This is not an ideal person, this is a real person. Stop placing unrealistic expectations on this person. And once you realize that, it will save you a lot. It will actually even help you weed out, like, people who essentially you don't feel like can help you. And it is unfair, I get it, it's unfair to have friendships and be conditional about it, but this is real life situation. You always want to have people who add into your life than people who do not add, or people who do not minus. It's a graph. Life is a graph. You always want to be moving up. You never want your graph to be stagnated, or you never want your graph to move down, you know? And that is essentially why even the people who you are surrounding yourself with, they need to be people who help your graph move up. Be it emotionally helping you to move up, be it people who you can talk to about certain conversations and they can help you get a clear view, a more analyzed view, or people who can essentially tell you, like, chill out, you're overthinking on this, it's just as simple as ABC, stop stressing yourself. You need that. And that is like, that was a nice conversation that I had, and I wanted to share it with you, and that is exactly what I am doing. Do not have unrealistic expectations for the so-called people who you call your friend. And also, who are you calling your friend? For me, and I have seen this in so many career talks and everything, where they're saying the people who you're working with, they're not your friends. And people always want to argue and be like, these are people who you're spending 8 hours of your day with, and you spend most of your, how can they not be your friend? And this is essentially what I said. You're spending 8 hours with these people in a controlled environment. When you are at work, there is a certain code of conduct that is expected of you while you are at work. You might share a few highs and hays here and there. You might share a few things about what is happening in people's lives, but you do not, like, do you get to spend time with this person out of work on your off day in an environment that is essentially uncontrolled, and this person can be who they truly are? For instance, at work, I get to talk to a lot of people. I am not an enthusiastic person when it comes to social interactions. I am usually choosy with the people who I interact with. But when I am at work, because my work essentially involves a lot of engagement with people, I have to do that. So you cannot tell me that because you're with me at work for 8 hours a day that you essentially know me. No, there is a facade, there is a mask that people put when they're at work. And so for me, people who I work with, few of them, and I'm not saying that over these number of years that I have worked, that I have not been able to make friends with people who I work with. There are people from my workplace or people who I have interacted with in my line of work who have crossed over from the line of being an acquaintance, being a colleague, being a workmate, to now I can comfortably refer to this person as my friend. But it didn't take 2 hours of talking, 3 days of 3 months. No, it took time. And there are values that I saw in them. And there, of course, are values that they saw in me that made us reach to that point where we were like, okay, yeah, we are definitely more than workmates. And it's intentionality, you know, it's intentionality in actually wanting to form that friendship. And it just doesn't come overnight. Like, it, you have to put in work. It's, you have to put in work in your friendships. And that's essentially it. Like, be intentional. Yeah. And I feel like I've just lost my train of thoughts, my lovely train of thoughts, and I want to bring them back. Oh my god, that side note was so random. But that is essentially about friendships and how it changes from how you choose to make your friends from a child, which was so carefree, so in the moment, to as an adult, you want to be intentional with the people who you're calling friends. You want to be intentional with the people who you are letting in. Because as an adult, there's so many things that you're facing, so many emotional challenges, so many emotional growth, so many financial challenges, so many things are even happening around you with your family, and you need to be around someone who is intentional with you and your relationship as friends in the same way that you are intentional with that friendship. And it also boils down to just in this formation of friendship as adults, not to say that just because you're intentional, you always get it right. At times, you get it wrong. And you realize that, oh my God, this person who I thought was a friend, who I thought I could confide in, who I thought could come through for me, you realize that this is not it. I need to bow down and walk away. How do you know that it's done? How do you know that this friendship is no longer serving the both of you in equal measure? And that is now comes down to, do you feel like the friendship is toxic? Do you feel like the friendship is one-sided? And at times you just grow out of being friends with someone. It's not that anything wrong happens, it's not that they do something to you, but you just grow out of that friendship and you feel like that relationship no longer serves the both of you. And this is like, essentially, if I can take an earlier example, it's how you make friends from your childhood to your preschool, pre-teen years, to your high school years, to your campus years, and maybe after campus to your workplace years. And you realize that some of the friendships that you formed when you were in primary, they were carefree. You people, as the two of you, or you people, sorry, never really got to talk about the deep things that you're facing right now as an adult. And essentially, you realize that starting to have that form of connection with this person becomes hard. And that's essentially when you realize that I have grown out of this friendship and I need to move on to a different, and I am at a different level. And for that reason, I need to move on and form connections that I feel will serve me in this stage of my life. For example, and I saw this from a YouTuber, and she got paged. She was living with her boyfriend, but most of her friends, if not all, who are in the same age as her, were not on family starting level. They were also not on like stable relationships like what she had or what she told us that she had. And once she got pregnant and all of her focus shifted from buying clothes, going to events, uh, I don't know, like trying new restaurants, going on road trips, just being carefree. When all of her focus changed to, now I have this little human who is growing inside of me, I need to be more prioritizing in terms of what I'm doing, what I'm purchasing, what I'm consuming, because now she could not consume material that was more so like carefree. She had to start consuming material that was more motherhood oriented, parenthood oriented. She realized that she's at a different stage in her life, that the friendships that she had at that particular stage, they no longer serve her. And in that state, no one has done anything wrong to anyone. You've just outgrown each other, and that is okay. It is okay to move on from friendships that you once thought were going to be lifelong and move on and form different friendships, because change is inevitable. Change happens at any point in our life. Change happens the same way, like you may find that at some point blue was your favorite color and all of a sudden blue is no longer your favorite color. Your favorite color is white or your favorite color is black. Change happens. we grow out of friendships and we move on to other friendships and we create more meaningful connections in accordance to how we feel in the stage of life that we are in. So you should be able to know when it's done and stop wasting your time trying to continue forcing a connection, trying to continue to create a light or whatever it is that you want to call it, when all the factors indicate that this friendship has outgrown. Oh my god, and a plane is flying right above me. And that's it. That is essentially it for knowing when to say it's done. And yeah, and that's all I had to say about friendship. And also the things that I have known now is that I want to continue to be intentional with the people who I am meeting, with the connections that I am forming. I want to be intentional. I want my purpose for me being in your life to be known. I want you to know that I want to be your friend. I enjoy your friendship. I want to be intentional. And even when we get to that point where we have fallen off as friends, I do not want to have regrets. I want to know that at that particular point, that friendship served me, but it is no longer serving me. And if I feel like your energy or your vibe is no longer meshing with my vibe, then I want to walk away. I want to be able to walk away. And that is exactly what I want you, my lovely listener, to also have. Be ready to always walk away from a friendship that is no longer serving you. It's not beef, it's not holding a grudge, it's not creating enmity. It's simply walking out of something that is not serving you. Because just because it's not serving you doesn't mean that person is not a good person, doesn't mean that you hate that person. It essentially means that I do not feel like you are serving me, and that is okay. For me and for you, we will find people who will serve us and who we will serve with vibes, with love, with laughter, with good times. And with that, I would like to end this episode. And I want to thank you who has listened till the end. I want to thank you so much. Sending out my love, my kisses, my hugs to you. Of course, there are kisses on the cheek. And thank you for listening to another episode. If I may have seemed confused somewhere in the episode, please forgive me. I have not done a podcast episode in a very long time and I'm trying to get myself back to the groove. Yeah, however, still share, still love, and follow us on all our social media platforms. Like I said at the beginning, we are Cut the Monologue on TikTok, on Instagram, and also on Twitter. And I love you all. Until the next episode, I was your lovely host, June Robinson, and this is Cut the Monologue, where we are unapologetically loud. Cheers.